Hi, I'm Ashley. This is Crafty with Ashley, and today I'm going to talk about if crocheting is easy. So let's just answer the question right out. Is crochet easy to learn? Yes. Crochet is actually very easy to learn, and the reason is once you master certain basic techniques and stitches, the rest is all just repetition. Even the more advanced techniques are just doing the same motions over and over, basically. So it does take a little bit of time and patience, but it's really actually very easy. In the most basic sense, crochet is just a matter of holding a hook and yarn, inserting the hook into your fabric, and doing a series of yarn overs and pulling up loops repeatedly. So the easiest way to learn a hands-on skill like crocheting really is in person, have that real-time feedback from somebody who knows how to do it. But you can also definitely learn by watching videos, like taking an online course that lays it all out, or just looking up YouTube tutorials. There are so many different options, and really it seems like these days you can learn anything on YouTube. So I put together a list of what I would consider the 5 hardest skills in crocheting that you really want to master before you try doing more complicated projects. So the first is holding your hook and your yarn correctly. Now, I say correctly loosely. There isn't one right way to hold a yarn and a hook, but the right way for you is going to be one that you can hold it comfortably, not have a death grip on the hook or the yarn. The yarn should glide smoothly as you're crocheting so that the tension does not get too tight. You don't want your fabric to be just one solid block and not have any flexibility to it. So however you choose to hold the yarn and the hook should be comfortable for you to do over a long period of time. The next hardest skill, I would say, is to learn where to insert your crochet hook. Now, there are multiple holes in a crocheted fabric, and making sure that you're putting your hook through the correct hole each time you're doing a stitch is important, or else you'll end up with kind of wonky, wavy edges or just an inconsistent look to your fabric. So the next hardest thing to master in crochet is just figuring out all of the sometimes confusing terminology. Every new hobby or career or everything has their own jargon, and that's just their language that's common among them, but to outsiders it seems like gibberish. So that could be from talking about the anatomy of a crochet stitch. There's different parts, just like our body, to frogging a project, which means to rip it out. So that can be confusing at times, and sometimes the terminology is inconsistent. So not everybody uses the same terms to mean the same things. And even there's a difference between US and UK terminology. So a single crochet in the US is called a double crochet in the UK, and then it builds from there. So that can be confusing, and learning those differences right away when you start learning is probably important so that you don't end up super confused when you're looking at patterns. Along that same lines is talking about the shorthand. So if you've ever picked up a magazine in the craft store or just looked online at a pattern, there's tons of shorthand in it, and you can really feel like an old person like I am looking at a teenager's text messaging, right? What do these acronyms mean? I have no idea. I'm completely lost. But the shorthand is actually pretty consistent between your patterns. So once you learn it, and you can always look back and reference things. So the Craft Yarn Council is kind of, I don't know, I want to use the word governing body. That's not really accurate, but it's kind of where you can go and find a lot of information about knitting and crocheting. And they have a complete list of crochet and knitting shorthand. So I'll link that below in the description. Finally, the last thing that I consider to be one of the hardest things to learn in crochet is just fluidity. It's the ability to just kind of keep that yarn and hook going. It helps keep your tension consistent so that your edges stay nice and straight and your fabric has the same kind of drape to it throughout. And that is a combination of being comfortable holding the yarn and hook, knowing where your hook goes, being comfortable manipulating the hook to pull it through the correct number of loops that are on your hook. each time without having to think about it and sit there and manipulate the hook forcefully. All right, so now to leave you with just a few tips to make learning to crochet easier. The first tip is that if you're finding it hard to go into that very first, what we call the foundation chain row, that's okay. Just keep going. It's going to be clunky for that first row, and then as you turn and start to build up some substance to your project, it does get easier. It's easier to crochet when you have some fabric to hold on to. You can see your stitches lining up better. I promise, even for experienced crocheters, sometimes it's challenging to work into that foundation row. I know for me, when I use very thin crochet thread with the tiny little hooks, it is just clunky getting the project started, especially if I haven't worked with the materials in a while. And once I get past those first couple rows, it just flows so much easier. I have something to hold on to. I can see my pattern kind of coming together, and it does get easier. So work on your fluidity past that foundation row, and then you can go back and practice working into a foundation row at another time once you're more comfortable with your materials. My second tip is really just start with the most basic stitch that you can. So it's actually just a chain stitch. And so just repeatedly doing long chains will help you just learn how you like to hold your yarn and your hook, how you like to manipulate it, whether you like to move the yarn over the hook or move the hook under the yarn. It doesn't matter. It's what you're comfortable with and what you feel like you can do without causing kind of repetition injuries or just effortful movements. And if you just start with the most basic, all of the other movements, like I said, just are repetitions of that same movement. If you are a beginner, check out this video here that has a whole bunch of different projects that you can make with just a chain stitch. That way you can have something finished, tangible at the end that you can use, but also be working on maintaining that constant tension, manipulating your materials. If you're not that much of a beginner, still check out my channel and subscribe. There's something for all levels of crocheters out there. I have tutorials, I have just general information and experiments and different things. So check it out. Thank you guys so much for watching.